Hey, welcome to another episode of Leadership and Character Development for the Greco-Roman national team. We got Olympic champ, two-time UFC champ, Henry Cejudo, and his coach, Eric Albarracin. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you. Triple C and the captain. Back again.
That's right. Loving the glasses, dude. So this show is all about leadership and just kind of giving our athletes kind of lessons on what it takes to be a champion and a leader in life, on and off the mat. I know, Henry, you left high school pretty early and moved out to Colorado Springs. What was that decision all about?
To me, man, it was nothing more than the dream. It was nothing more than chasing the dream and wanting to accomplish something that's I guess wanted me to accomplish my imagination. You know what I mean? Because that's what a dream is. What is a dream? A dream is your imagination. And I was wrestling was my first love. Other than my mom, wrestling became my first love. And I think that's what I think when you love something so much and you give it that all, man, that you're willing to do anything and everything in order to obtain that goal. So as a kid, Matt, I knew that I was different, man. I knew that I was special. I always felt that, so. And I think through nature and nurture growing up in my environment and how I was raised, I think I was just born to be a wrestler. If that makes any sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I discovered the sport pretty late myself, but when I put myself in an environment to where, yeah, my coach told me to dream about being a champion, winning the Olympics, and I got fairly close, but I didn't get on the top of the podium like you did. Well, okay, at 17, you decided, I'm going to leave home, move to the Olympic Training Center. I mean, what gave you the audacity and the courage and to believe you could do something like that? I mean, nobody else did. I mean, you were the youngest Olympic champion for the United States. What made you think you could do that other than the dream?
Man, it was the opportunity that was given to me. It was the resources that were given to me. I was a kid from the ghetto, a kid literally from the ghetto. I know a lot of people talk about the ghetto, but really, I'm one of 7 kids. It was a survival thing, and I knew the power of having a bed. I knew the power of having my own room, of having a restroom, of having a wrestling room, and having the best coaches in the world, the cafeteria that's open from 7 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. It was that, man. It was like, man, I have everything. Like, a lot of people would complain. A lot of kids would go to the training camps in Colorado Springs and they would complain, the fact that, they weren't home and things like that. And to me, man, that was like paradise. To me, the Olympic Training Center was literally paradise, man. I was doing everything that I've ever wanted at the Olympic Training Center. But that's actually an amazing story too, Matt, because the way I was brought in to work out, to be a training partner for Patricia Miranda, at 105 pounds. And the reason why they brought me out, because I was good friends with Tricia and Townsend Saunders. And they're like, this is the kid that has a lot of fast, low singles. And this is the kid that could give Patricia Miranda the best shot at beating the Japanese. So they brought me out for a month. And I remember for that month, I was getting ready for Fargo. And for that month, I would eat in the gym. Everything that I did, I was doing Greco practice, freestyle men's practice, and freestyle women's practice, like every single day. So, and they saw that they're like, this kid's gonna break, man. This kid is doing too much. And no, within that whole month, man, I was consistent because I was that obsessed, man. Like, wrestling was literally my best friend. Like, to me, it was beyond junior nationals. It was beyond, not, it was just beyond anything in the U.S. Man. Like, I was so driven and so determined to become an Olympic champion that I was willing to do anything, man. And the way that happened was, so they saw all this for a whole month go on, and then my coach at that time, he gets a phone call, and he's like, actually during the camp, he gets a phone call. He's like, "Hey, what's Henry? What's he doing? Is he trying to prove something to everybody? He's out too much. We've already told him." And he's like, "No, he's like, you don't understand, man. This kid is abnormal, man. He's just not. You can almost say he's not right in the head. I mean, he's obsessed, man, with becoming the best in the world." And after, so the month goes by. I go straight from Colorado Springs to junior nationals, and then I go out and I win both styles. That's when I wrestled Mango and Greco, and then I beat Franklin Gomez in freestyle to win my freestyle title. So I was double champ, and I don't think nobody scored on me. I think I only had a couple people score on me in the whole tournament. And then I get another phone call, and they were like, "Hey, man, we want you to become a resident athlete at the Olympic Training Center, to hopefully prep you to become an Olympic champion for 2012." And I said, this isn't about 2012. I said, you guys give me all the resources. I'm gonna have all the resources, the training partners that I need. I said, give me 4 years, man. In 2008, man, I will shock the world. And I remember telling this to Kevin Jackson, because we would have meetings right before he would bring people in as a resident athlete. And sure enough, man, that kid with that dream, became the youngest in history to ever win an Olympic gold medal in 2008. So it's definitely, I guess I always tell people that it takes two things to make somebody special, to make an Olympic champion. I call it two things, and I call it heart and ability. What is your heart? Your heart is the goodness of your mind. It's not your cardiovascular. It's not your heart pumping. Your heart is literally the goodness of your mind. Your heart is your passion, your will, your desire. Your heart is something that you're willing to suffer for in order to obtain. And that was me, man. Like, I was willing to suffer at whatever cost to obtain my dream. You guys imagine what it's like to be under Terry Brands for 4 years? I mean, that stuff it's an experience, man. It's something that's maybe something that I will never forget. And I think the biggest thing, though, Matt, is having, so that's the heart. So now the ability is something that you train and you rep over time when you become a master of it. Now your heart has to match your ability. So it's always great to question either one or two things. Either your practice, which is the wrestling, which is the technical, the tactical, the preparation, the recovery, that's your ability. Or questioning your heart. Your heart is your passion, your will, your desire, the goodness of your mind, how far you're willing to go in order to obtain this goal, how far you're willing to suffer to obtain this goal. And I feel like to be the 1% of the 1%ers, for me, I felt like my heart at the Olympic Games and my ability became one. Like my mind, my body, my soul, like it all became one. And when that becomes one, man, Jesus, I got the chills right now. It's extremely powerful, and it's extremely you see it in guys like Jordan Burroughs. I think only an Olympian or Olympic champ could describe and understand that sense of feeling. Man, you can see it in certain people that they have it. You know what I mean? So you can see it in the Accepted Live. You can see that his mind and you can see that his heart and his ability are one. These guys that have been there, and I don't even know if they could describe it like that. but that's the closest what I could describe in order for somebody to be the 1% of the 1%ers, to be the world or an Olympic champ.
What do you think other athletes lack in that? Like, I mean, there not very many people. They look at going maybe NCAA. You never even considered that because you had a higher goal. But how do you get an athlete's mind to be where they can believe that?
Yeah, I think part of the athlete, and this is the honest to God truth, because I've seen it and I see it even till today, is they overestimate their strength. They think they're better than what they really are. You know, and I see this even in fighting now. I just feel like a lot of people, the reason why a lot of people don't accomplish what they want to accomplish is because they think that they're better than what they really are. That's probably, to me, that's what I see. Like, oh, I can win it. I just got to have that one good tournament. And I can, you know, even though I've lost, you know, the last 10 in a row, but it just takes that one tournament. I think overestimating your strength, thinking that you're better than what you really are, I think is probably like the biggest mistakes that you could make as an athlete, as a fighter, as a wrestler, because man, you have to humble yourself, and you have to continue to keep evolving, and you have to continue to keep evolving, and just becoming a better wrestler, a better fighter, you know. So, and then the other thing too is, so if I was to say one thing, so I'm gonna say overestimating your strength, thinking you're better than what you really are. And I think the other one is fear. I think a lot of fighters, a lot of wrestlers, they don't know how to wrestle with fear, you know. And to me, I've always liked the challenge of fear. And the reason why I say challenge of fear, because that's who Henry is, man. I love a challenge, man. Even wrestling, man, fighting, dude, I'm challenging my soul. I'm challenging myself, man. I'm challenging not only my opponent, but the pressure and the naysayers around me. And I like to bring that upon me to demonstrate to the world as a challenge that, man, this is who I am. I'm not just fighting. I'm not just wrestling. I'm demonstrating my heart to you guys. This is who I am as a person. And I think when you're able to face those things, which a lot of people don't know how to do, you don't fake it till you make it. You face it, man. You understand that this is what a fighter, this is what a legend goes through. This is what a champion goes through before he becomes a legend. And I think that's extremely huge for me. So it's two things. You think you're better than what you really are, and you need to learn how to embrace the pressure and everything that comes with competing.
Wow. Henry, that's awesome. That's really, really insightful. And we've talked a lot on the prior shows with Lee Kemp and a handful of other guys about that importance of humility. And I actually do scientific studies of the brain of when people actually overestimate themselves. What you were talking about, we talked about that last show. So you're actually hitting a lot of chords that resonate a lot. And it makes me think, when you talk about this immense belief system you had in yourself and that athletes need, I wanted to ask if there were times when there were challenges to that where you might have been daunted, or you might have, you know, needed to reboot that belief system. And what was the role of, you mentioned having great coaches, and certainly have Captain Eric here, you know, best coach in the UFC right now, as far as I'm concerned. And you guys have this great coach, mentor, friendship relationship. What have you seen in terms of coachability and the influence of coaches to helping people build and also sustain those belief systems when they're under attack trying to climb that mountain? How do you maintain it? Were there threats to that self-belief at times? Were there times when you doubted and you had to overcome that? Or was it like just absolute blinders on you? No doubt at all.
Of course.
And what was the role of coaches and what was the role that you developed in having coachability to the influence that coaches gave?
I think it all depends on the different point that you are in your life. Like, it really does. Like, it all depends where you're at. You know, as an elite wrestler, like, you really need your coach, man. As a developmental wrestler, like, you really need your coach for the techniques and the tactics. But as you start to become more elite, the coach, it's got to become a bond, and it has to become a belief system within both of you guys. And, you know, like with me and Eric, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's different. It's different because, man, I've known him for so long that, you know, he's like a brother to me. Like, literally, like, I tell you, like, he's a brother to me. He's a coach, but he's a brother to me. And who do you fight with the most? Your brother,
having
you
7
know?
Siblings,
But
you
also,
probably can tell
who
us.
do you listen to the most? You listen to your brother the most, and I think that's what that's where you know, that's where Eric comes in, man. He has nothing to gain but my love, man, but my success, and to me it's our success, and to me, being his student athlete, man, like, I want to demonstrate to him too, you know, that I want to do this for him too. You know what I mean? I know the time and the dedication that he does for all that. So I want to demonstrate that, not just to my coach, but my training partners, that everything that we've done is all going to make sense because you guys have been with me. We become one through all this, you know. And to answer that other piece with the mind, dude, we're human beings, man. You cannot control this mind. You gotta channel this thing, because the mind will try to play games with you. It happens all the time, and it happens at the Olympic Games. It happens at the World Championships. It happens even during my fights. But I've been able to understand that my mind likes to do that. And I got to remember, what is the sole purpose? What is the goal? Because at the end of the day, nothing matters on what I'm feeling until that damn whistle blows. I can be so nervous. I can be so scared. But when that whistle blows, to me, everything goes out the window, because now it's all about the action. And the action is the most important piece of everything, really. In reality, is you putting your money where your mouth is. At the appointed time, you can be scared. You can be a little bee, but until that whistle blows, until that ref says go fight, or in wrestling, the whistle blows, that's when it really counts, man. That's when you really got to step it up, man. That's when you're supposed to shine, man. That's when you're supposed to dance. So, and I've been in a lot of scenarios like that. I competed so much that it doesn't faze me, man, because the way I've been able to channel all that, and the way that I've been able to somewhat put my mind in check, man, and to see what is the goal, what is the overall goal, man. And I've been pretty good at it.
You've been doing well, and yes, congratulations on all your successes. Since the Olympics. Eric, when you met Henry, you started out as a training partner with him, didn't you?
Yes, we were. I was still at the Olympic Training Center as a resident athlete, off-campus resident athlete at the time, and I was in the military. And I remember seeing the first time, I think, is when he talked about coming for that month camp. I remember seeing him with these blonde spiked hair, and I was just like, who's this little kid running around? I think he was like 105 pounds, soaking wet. But he definitely had a presence about him. Reminded me a little bit of myself, but I wasn't a 2-time or 4-time state champ. So, but I knew if he was at the OTC, he had to be good. And he was there with his brother. And one thing I learned in 2003, about a year earlier, was how to host. There was a Mongolian that came, and he didn't speak any English. And really, nobody was helping him out. So me and a guy named Tony Deanda kind of took him under our wing and helped him out a lot and made sure whatever he needed, we got him. He smoked a lot of cigarettes, so we ended up getting him a lot of cigarettes, but we helped him with everything, you know. We made sure he got his per diem. We made sure when he got sick, he got taken care of. Thanksgiving and Christmas and things like that. And then I remember one time Henry, well, at the Olympic Training Center, you know, it closes on Thanksgiving. So for the week of Thanksgiving, the cafeteria closed, and I think everybody at the OTC it was just closed down. But if you didn't have, you could stay there, but there was nowhere to eat. And if you didn't have a car and it's freezing outside, where are you going to go eat? And I just remember asking them, what are you guys eating? Him and his brother Angel. And I think Sergey Beloglazov gave them Pop-Tarts. And they had Pop-Tarts for the week. And then I remember, oh, no, let's go. Thanksgiving dinner. I'm taking you guys out. And I think ever since then, we've been more than training partners. I kind of retired just a couple of years. I only wrestled a couple of years after that. I wrestled Greco for 2 seasons. But I remember when I would get ready for the armed forces, I would say, all I need is Henry and Angel. I was like, because I worked for I was in the military. So our times, at that point, I wasn't on the world-class athlete program. I was doing All Army, which is a different schedule. So I had my regular unit. So after practice, I'd go find Henry, and Henry would be, like he said, he was doing. Not only was he doing all those practices at the ODC, he also did the high school practice that he didn't mention. So he would throw in the high school practice too. So that was like 4 times a day, and I would show up at after work at 5, and he'd still be working out, and I'd be like, man, I just need 15 minutes with Henry, 15 minutes with him. So I would train with Henry and get ready for the armed forces and go out there and win it. But I always knew that there was something about him that he was going to be great, because any challenge that was thrown at him, he just overcame. I mean, the people in that room is for him. You had Sean Bunch, you had Abbas, you had Kendall Cross. You had Angel Cejudo,
Bill
Zadig, and then you had the camps coming in. And then you had, I mean, it was just the perfect combination for exactly what he said. He had the technique, he had the ability, he had the heart, he had the willingness to sacrifice whatever it took, leave everything behind to chase a dream. And then you put him in this situation, and he's just gonna thrive. And I never seen someone so driven. There's something about Henry that motivation is fickle. I was motivated, but it's a little different. A lot of people are motivated, but motivation comes and goes. One day you wake up, you might not be motivated. Sometime another day you hear the eye of the tiger on your headphones, and now you're motivated. Henry was never like that. Henry was just driven. It's driven. It's different than motivation. And when you're driven, any obstacle in your way gets destroyed. Any adversity, you overcome it.
Well, I've never seen anybody with as strong of a belief system as you, Eric. Eric actually was the guy who introduced Matt and I. He brought us down to a camp that he ran in Colorado. And he was believing in you. I think that was 2011, right, Eric? And I remember he was talking about you. He's like, man, we're going to get Henry, and Henry's going to be a world champ. You guys watch and see. Like he had such a belief system in what you were capable of, Henry. And you could see that sort of like love like a brother exude in Eric even back then. And certainly what you've done now in your coaching career, Eric, has been incredible in the MMA with everybody you've inspired. I've never seen anybody with as strong of a belief system as you do for other people, Eric. It's awesome. I mean, remember when we went to Alpha Male in Sacramento, I was even a little nervous to get on the mat, and you're like, dude, get out there. Like, you're such a you're such a good coach in that regard.
Yeah, I think it comes from, I'll tell you the truth, the Olympic Training Center. I mean, part of it, when Henry did is like, I always think like, man, I was always, and I'm still willing. Yeah, I was always willing to go wherever I needed to go to get better. So for me, when I was in high school, I took second in state. Nobody. 103 pounds. Nothing. I lost to Lee Pritz in the finals. Do you think anybody's recruiting me? I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to Arizona State, #1 school in the nation. Why? Bobby Douglas, Zeke Jones, Tim Vaney, Rob Eider, Sunk His Kids, Art Martorio, all these guys were there. I'm like, that's where I need to go. I wasn't even in my opinion, I wasn't any good technique-wise. But being I was like, I have to get better. If I can get in the right situation, I'll get better. As soon as I got to Arizona, within, I want to say 3 years, I was on the national team. But when I got to the Olympic Training Center, we talking about belief and like really, I always felt that wrestlers never got enough respect. So I've always wanted to promote wrestlers. And Matt knows this because he lived at the Olympic Training Center. They would have a tour guide that comes in. A tour guide comes into the Olympic Training Center during practice, and we could have Matt Lindland, Rulon Gardner, Brandon Slay, all these Olympic and NCAA All-Americans, NCAA champions, Cale Sanderson, Kevin Jackson, Bruce Burnett. You could have all those people in the room. And the tour guide would come in with 100 tourists. And then they would be talking about the throwing dummies on the side and not the athletes. And that drove me crazy. I was like, because I respected these guys because I never had an NCAA title. I never had a state title. And I'd be like, these guys are the heroes. And you guys are talking about the throwing dummies of souffles from Ivan Ivanov. And it never made sense to me. I was like, how could you guys do this? So I got an idea of like, I'm going to put on a show. And I started jumping rope. I learned how to jump rope. And I was like, so when this tour guides would come in, I'd give it a jump rope session like Buddy Lee, jumping on my butt, doing backflips, front flips. And then after that, I would introduce all these wrestlers. You see that guy right there? That guy's a 4-time All-American from this school. This person, that person's this Olympian, this person is that. And I just always had a belief in trying to tell people about these wrestlers that are so good. And that, tell you the truth, it's carried into MMA because a lot of my fighters don't have those mic skills. They don't know how to promote themselves. They have, or sell a fight. So I'm like, I try to help them and be like, this is how good this person is. This is how far he's gonna go. This is his potential. So for me, it works out because half my athletes don't even speak English.
Well, whatever you're doing is working, man. I mean, if you remember when we all met in 2011 at your camp in Colorado, I mean, we were all at kind of our own crossroads, and you helped kind of ignite that spark among everybody there. And I mean, everybody's careers have launched in different ways. And, so I kind of wanted to ask Henry too, what's next? You shocked the world with your retirement and, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I watched that and as a fan of yours, and at the same time, what was happening in sort of societies, there was that ESPN series on the Bulls from the 90s that was happening at that same time. So there's that documentary about Jordan, the GOAT. And what?
You think I'll get one? You think I'll get one?
I think you should. I think you got to have Eric start talking to ESPN and getting them one of them for you. But Jordan was chronicled in that. He was videos from like 98, 97 where he's exhausted. He's laying down, kind of like you're laying down now. And he's just trying to tell people that I don't think people understand how ready I am for a new chapter in life. He's like, he was just ready to retire, and he shocked the world when he did at that time. And so when you retired too, it kind of resonated because, you know, you're like the Michael Jordan for these sports. So you're the GOAT too.
Yeah,
So
for combat sports, I would humbly agree. And I feel like that. I feel like I'm at that status of I feel like I'm that status of a Michael Jordan. I'm like, I may not get that recognition, but I understand that, dude. I understand exactly Kobe Bryant. A lot of these guys that have reached the top of these sports, I know exactly how they think, and you know what I mean, because I watched the Jordan Chronicles, and man, I see myself. I know exactly how Jordan is because that's exactly who I am. You know, like Jordan didn't. He ain't give anything to nobody. Jordan always gave it all, man. He left it all in the. He left it all on the court, just like I left it all in the wrestling match. I could never tell you one time that I lost where I could have said I could have gave more. I could have never could I ever say that. I've lost before. Could I have been better technically? Yes. Tactically, yes. But to say that I didn't give my all, man, I don't think I can tell you one time in the fight or in a wrestling match that I could say, hey, I just rolled over. I just didn't want it. Like that has never been in my vocabulary. Like I was so stingy. I didn't want to give anybody anything, nothing, zero. And I think that's just the different levels of competitors. You know what I mean? The different levels of how a Michael Jordan, of how guys like that, how they think, man. It's very broad. I guess it's very detailed in that sense of, man, I ain't giving you anything. I'm greedy, man. It's almost like this is about me. You know?
So Henry, I mean, as a world-class athlete, I mean, there's a lot of times where you have to be completely selfish and get what you need, take what you need. How is that different in on the mat and off the mat for you? I mean, you're a kind, loving individual off the mat, but on the mat you're very selfish and get what you need. How do you handle that dichotomy?
Yeah, there's just I think the only way that I could really simplify that, Matt, is that's exactly what it is, man. That's exactly what it is. It's an individual sport. You do have your team, but everything that you do has to revolve around you. You know, everything that you do when it comes to recovery, when it comes to training, when it comes to getting attention even from coaches, like you have to go out there, you have to search, man. You have to create that, you know, especially if your goal is to be an Olympic champion, man. Like it is such a selfish lifestyle, but rightfully so. It doesn't make you a bad human being. You know,
Not
I
at
think
all.
for the longest there, and I'll be honest with you too, man, like a lot of my selfishness in wrestling, and I'm learning this now, man. This is why I'm excited for the next chapter to retire, because I've brought a lot of that selfishness even in life, man. I'll do certain things and I'm just like, whoa, that just went over my head, man. Like I forgot about so and so because I was so accustomed to doing everything and anything for my self fulfillment, whether it's been combat sports or wrestling. You know, so to me, like this is why the retirement side of it is extremely exciting, because it's going to give me that whole different perspective, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm in a relationship now with my girl, and it's a serious relationship. It's like, hey, man, you know, you can't just you can't just go off and wander off, man. Like, there's things that you have to do, but I can rightfully now, man, do that now because I've accomplished everything that I've ever wanted to accomplish. So if you're training, if you're looking to become an Olympic champion, if you're looking to become a world champion, understand, man, that you cannot have any negativity. You cannot have a girlfriend, a boyfriend. You cannot have people like that in your life that are not pushing the same card, man. You do not need your stress levels, your cortisol to rise for stupidity, because the overall goal is to become an Olympic champion. And Jesus is that beautiful. Jesus, man, I'll never forget it, man. For 2 weeks after I won the Olympics, man, I would wake up. I would only sleep a couple hours. I swear to you, 3 hours, because I couldn't believe that I was an Olympic champion.
Well, Henry, I got to tell you, you talk about being the value of the importance of being selfish when necessary in your training for those goals. And I think that's right and good. But, to let you know too, that like, you might've been focusing on what you needed to do, but all you guys, when you're wearing that American singlet and when you're training, behind closed doors to wave that flag, you're inspiring a nation and a world. And, a little side story for me is that when you won in the Olympic trials in 2008, I was living in my office in graduate school at UC Davis. Like, I was camping under my desk. I didn't like living out of my car in the office. And my dream was to be an astronaut for NASA. And I wasn't even halfway through grad school, and they followed the Olympic cycles, 8, 12, 16, 20, and they were open at 8. And I thought I was too young to apply because it was. But I saw what you did and what Dieschler did on the Greco side to make the team. And then it inspired me to do what Eric says, is put your hat in the ring, weigh in if you want to wrestle. And I said, look at this guy, Henry. He just shocked the world and made the team. And then when you won, it inspired me to pursue those dreams and to have the courage to actually try when I thought I'd be too young, instead of waiting for 12. No, let's go 8. And, that selfishness that you think is selfish is serving to inspire, the entire country. And people who, you never think about some nerd in a science lab in Davis being inspired by a wrestling tournament or something. But I have pictures of you waving the flag in my office back then. Like, I remember watching on Flow or something. And what you guys do affects so many people. It's incredible. And you guys should know that too. So it's not just selfishness in that regard. There's a much broader service that you're providing to so many people way beyond wrestling.
Yeah, you hand out, absolutely, man. You give people life, man. You give people inspiration. That means a lot to me that you bring that up. But I'll leave you guys off with this thing, man, because I gotta catch a flight here pretty soon.
You got it.
The life of Triple C, is I'll never forget it. And sometimes I think people forget that inspirational piece of it. I made the Olympic team. I beat Stephen Abbas. And I'll never forget it. I beat Stephen Abbas, and I go up to Terry Brands, or Terry Brands comes up to me, and I'm like, Terry, we did it. And then, bah! He hits me with his right hand, man, right in my face, slaps me. He's like, what do you mean we did it? I says, the Olympics is only a qualifier, stud. Wake up. And I'm like, damn, dude, that is the best advice, which was done, verbally and physically, that anybody has ever done. I literally got pinch slapped by my coach, man. And that just, I was a kamikaze, man. So if my coach was to beat me, like, I just sit there and curl up and take it, because I respect him. I respect Terry so much, man, because I was able to see his hurt, from him, not winning the Olympics and being a bronze medalist. Like, man, I could see his hurt, man. But that hurt was also a fire that he always wanted us to fulfill, because he never fulfilled. So I made the Olympic team. I get stopped by Terry Brands, and moments before I went off to China, I in my heart, man, I wanted to do the tour around the UFC, around the OTC. You know how they typically do the tour? They send you when they take the crowd and take them all over, like the pool area, the gymnastics, the boxing. I watched the inspirational video in the beginning. And I did that. I did that to remember why I went to United States Olympic Training Center, why I did what I did. And I'll never forget it because I took a picture of the gold medal and I printed it out. I printed that gold medal out, and I was reading at that time. I was reading Oscar de la Hoya's book throughout the Olympics, and the inspiration that I had, just I kept it alive, man. Even so forth, like going into the Olympic Games, like doing a tour, guys. You know how many times? I mean, I would eat, sleep, and train to see these people three to four times a day, but I knew that I had to do it just one last time to make sure to understand that why I'm doing what I'm doing, you know. And in 2008, Henry Cejudo became the youngest Olympic champion in the history of the United States of America.
From yoke to goat.
From yoke to goat.
What was
Henry,
tough?
thank you for your time, man. We really appreciate you coming on with us. And Eric, if you don't mind sticking around, we'd love to have you stick around. But
yeah,
sure.
I would love to, Matt. I'm gonna shower up and whatnot, but you guys pick that dude's brain, man. If anybody knows my life story, if anybody has seen it through his eyes and literally being there, he was there. He was there when I won the Olympics. He was there when I won my UFC title. If anybody knows it better, even more than my brother, Adrian, it's going to be that man right there, Captain Eric Albarracin, people.
well, thanks.
We'll see you, Matt. Take it easy.
All right, brother. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Be safe. Watch out.
Yeah, I got you, bro.
Captain America, we got you, brother.
With an S. Captain America's. For South America as well. Canada,
That's right.
Puerto Rico, Colombia. Something that I've noticed since I've been in this quarantine and not being around my fighters, my athletes a lot, and being more around, just not being around the fight world, is we're extraordinary. As wrestlers, as somebody who sets a goal and trying to achieve it and doing whatever it takes and sacrificing, we're extraordinary because when I see around other people, when I'm around other people, they really can't handle my rhetoric. They can't handle, like, what's your aspiration? Why don't you want to be the best in the world? Why don't you want to be the best at what you do? I just want to get on the stuff I've heard from some people, like there's no, they're not driven. I can tell you that. And even the motivation is a different motivation. It's just like they're content sitting on a hammock or something. I mean, it's just different that these athletes, or even world-class athletes, are that were driven or motivated. And I think that that what makes it extraordinary. And on top of that would be at the Olympic Training Center, most everybody is an All-American national champion, world class. We're uncommon people. I mean, a winner is uncommon. You go to a tournament, there's only one winner. So a winner is uncommon. And everybody at the Olympic Training Center was uncommon. But Henry was uncommon amongst uncommon people, which is why he's at where he's at. And it's very, very hard to find somebody like that. Uncommon amongst uncommon people. An uncommon person amongst world champions, amongst 4-time NCAA champ or 3-time NCAA champions. And you're uncommon amongst them. That's what always was special about, or now that's what I know what was special about Henry. You could see it at the Olympic Training Center. I saw it every day. I saw it every day when I saw Cejudo training. So I think that's just something that I wanted to mention, that being around ordinary people, I realized that we're extraordinary. And then I also realized there's also another level to that. And that's somebody like Triple C. There is a reason why there's no Olympic gold medalist in the UFC besides Henry. It is to accomplish everything you've ever accomplished and that you ever wanted to in life. Let's say I wanted to become a billionaire, but became a billionaire. The next day I'm going to give it all away and go back to zero. Nobody's willing to do that but one person. Nobody's willing to start at ground zero. I mean, the people that tried, Kevin Jackson tried it, but then he lost. And when he lost, he never lose. That's it. Because when you lose, it's like you're tarnishing. You're like, wait a minute, I'm better than this. You can't tarnish me. This isn't really my sport. I'm the best in this. I'm not going to tarnish my name. Henry was different in the fact that he went all the way to the ground zero and decided to climb another Mount Everest. And I think that's what's extraordinary about him and normal people. You even I just noticed that in the regular world in which I'm not in that often. I'm mostly with all my fighters all the time, is that they're not driven the same way. They're not motivated the same way. They're not around people like us a lot. And I think Rick is more, well, you're at the OTC. Rick probably, no, I would like to hear what you have to say, because you're probably in that same area, but with people that are more intelligent, I guess I would say, at different aspirations, but still trying to be the best. You were a Rhodes Scholar. I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I failed at that too. I was a finalist for the Rhodes Scholarship, and so we
which put a chip on your shoulder.
That's right.
Which puts you, when you get, before I send it back to you, that's the one thing that Henry didn't have when he went over to MMA. He didn't have the chip on his shoulder. And it's only till he lost to Demetrius Johnson that this kid, I mean, it was like night and day. We went through the roof. The next fight was Joe Benavidez. And even though they say he lost that fight, I was proud, because it was that fight that he went from being a competitor to a warrior. Henry knows how to compete. He knows how to win at all costs, but not warrior. So when he became a warrior, mixed with his competitiveness, different story. And that's what we saw when he fought Joe Benavidez. A little bit too much warrior in that fight, even though I still think he won. But then we toned it down, 50% warrior, 50% competitor, and now he's unstoppable. I mean, that I believe is something that is also, as a fighter, you need. But back to with Rick, I asked you already, it's like normal people, but some people trying to become an astronaut, it's not really that normal. And you did have that chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, and it can fuel you, I think, at certain levels, right? The chip fuels you where you need to get past, I think, certain levels of adversity and certain levels of growth. But then I think, and I mean, you guys might be able to inform this from your own perspectives too, but I think that then the chip on your shoulder will only get you so far. I think that once you eclipse to a different level beyond that, once that's enough fuel to where you need to be, then I think to reach that next level up, and I think Henry alluded to this really well in his comments, that I think anger won't get you there. I think love and joy will. And you've got to use that positive energy then to climb that last kind of rung of the mountain. And so an example of that, I think, I went to high school where Frank Molinaro went to high school, and he wrestled essentially like a savage all through high school and college. What we would call wrestling with anger. Like, he killed people. It was great, right? Gorilla Hulk, whatever. But when he made the jump in international style, it looked like he was wrestling with joy now on the mat. And that's when he was taking that next level up at the Olympic style. But to your thing, Eric, about that sort of weirdness, what makes us weird compared to other people? I mean, we see that as certainly, you'll see that in anything. you know, in academics and science, you know, I'm at Cal State, so we're not at the top of the mountain. We're actually on the bell curve style. We're actually kind of in the middle. And it's actually really hard for me because you want to work. I'm used to going and visiting you guys at the Olympic trainers or going to NASA and being around the astronauts. And that when you're in that vibe, just like Henry said, all that flow states, everything is happening. The dots are connecting, the lines are connecting, and you relish and love the opportunities of not just the facilities, but it's the people. It's that web of a network of iron sharpening iron, that drivenness that feeds and breeds all that goodness of everybody to climb together. And yeah, when we come back to like Cal State, or you're surrounded with an average mindset of people who don't see that. And then when they see that drivenness, they see that competitiveness, or that drivenness that Henry talked about, then it's odd to them. And then I think that we talked last week, Matt, with Aaron Steed and his moving company. Eric, he gave a great talk about being a business leader from what he learned in wrestling. And he mentioned that they had to have the courage to be weird. And he'd be like singing songs in a farmer's market trying to attract customers when he was starting off with his wrestling buddies. And I think that you have to be comfortable being weird and having other people not understand that drivenness. You have to be comfortable because you have to know and believe on the inside what you're doing and why, and understand that other people aren't going to get that. And I don't know that. And if you're
for sure, I know exactly what you're talking about when you say they don't get it. They're like, they'll tell you, we're not like you. We don't want to be the best. Stop trying to motivate me.
Yeah, but isn't that crazy? Like, is that not, don't your ears get allergic to somebody telling you they don't want to be the best?
Oh, I pull back. I'm just like, okay, it's well, you know, like when Henry retired once, you know, Henry retired his first fight in the UFC, and I ran after him in the car as he's leaving and trying to open the door and screaming at him, you're not retiring. You're going to be the best one there. You're going to be the greatest. And he was like, nope, I'm done. So I knew then, but like when a regular person I already see and I'm trying to motivate them and they're telling me, I don't want to be the best. And I'm just like, oh, all right, well, I got nothing for you then. I don't know what else to tell you.
So what do you do, Eric, with your athletes how do you help them take that jump, right? So there might be guys on the wrestling community or the fighting community, you know, not everyone has the privilege of going to the OTC or ASU or being around your fight camp or you know, Team Alpha Male or whatever. These are special, or Team Quest. These are special nuclei of platinum gold radiating people, but they're small little pockets of people. And there's a lot of guys and fighters and wrestlers out there who might not be around that, but who could have a lot of talent or a lot of desire or whatever. And they're surrounded by that averageness, and the heart is there. They want to grow. How do you help them make that jump? How do you get them to not get influenced by those inputs coming in from the environment?
Mindset.
Yeah, how about just an above average mindset versus a mindset for greatness?
Exactly. When you say a mindset for greatness, it always like you're trying to I'm always trying to seek it out, whether it's technology, whether it's technical, whether it's emotional. I'm always, you know, sports psychology. I'm always seeking out the best. You know, I went to the Olympic Training Center, and then after that, I was like, all right, when I get into MMA, where's the best? At that time, I went to Brazil, Vale Tudo, the birth of where it all started in Vale Tudo in Brazil, and started there. And the one thing is, when you talk about energy, is like I feel that energy is attractive to me, and when I went to, maybe when I saw Henry, I was attracted to that energy. He was attracted to my energy. When I went to Brazil, I had 50 people on a team, but 2 kids stuck out to me, and that was the Pitbull brothers, who consequently has 2, also a champ in Bellator. And the other ones that has the most knockouts in history. And we were attracted to each other. They're like magnets. And I'm always seeking. I'm not trying to be I knew nothing about neuroscience. And when I met Rick, I went to, he's like, hey, there's a brain. What was it? Neuroscience, not festival, not seminar.
Conference.
What's
that? A conference.
Conference. I was like, shit, let's go. I want to learn.
Yeah, you saw Ali.
I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be the person that's going to learn from somebody. I mean, look at me. We went to the Olympic Training Center. I didn't go to freestyle practice. I went to Greco practice, and we found Matt Lindland. And we like, Matt Lindland, we want to know what you know. And I had 2 guys with me, Henry Cejudo and Patricio Pitbull. And those 2 guys now had 4 belts, 4 world titles in the entire world. That's like 25% of the entire world. And we were there to learn from Matt Lindland. I brought them there because I was like, no, this is where we're going. And I'm not sure. I don't think we went specifically for Matt Lindland. But once we were there, we knew this is where we're going to his practice. We called him, hey, when are you available? I'm with you. We're not going to freestyle practice. We're going to your practice, or can you come coach us? And I remember that. And something, even when we've been talking a lot about Henry, but even with Patricio Pitbull, he saw me as, hey, this is the missing key. And when I brought him to the Olympic Training Center, he always yells at me to this day. He's like, fuck, like, Eric, you throw me to the wolves. I didn't even know how to wrestle. You brought me to the Olympic Training Center, and you're throwing me into Greco practice. And he's training with Harry Lester, and he's training with Matt Lindland, and he's training with all those guys, all those residents at the Olympic Training Center. And some of them were throwing him on his head. But eventually he started getting to get better. And you know what I told him? And when I tell him now, he tries to tell that story. Eric throws me to the wolves. And I always say, I wouldn't have thrown you to the wolves if I didn't think you were a wolf. And I always knew, man, that energy. I don't attract people that don't want to win. I can tell you that.
You radiate it. It's you, man. You're a magnet too, Eric. You radiate that out. That positivity, that excellence, that greatness, that radiates from you, both as a competitor, but as a coach and a leader. Like that radiates out. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just them. That's takes 2 to tango on that one, dude. Like you made that happen. You made that camp happen where we all met. You brought Stephen Neal down and Matt Lindland and Tadaki Hata and everybody. Like, you brought everybody, that cluster of people, and look where people have gone now from what you made happen. I mean, and what you're doing now is go coaching.
And I have more people attracted. I had and that's the one thing is, like, if someone's reaching out to me, I'll listen. I'm like, all right, let me see. Is this guy the real deal? Because people don't reach a lot of, that's the Phil Jackson of MMA. I want to be on that team. But some of them don't really want it. And you have to test if they really want it. But one thing as a coach, I can say, as Phil Jackson, Phil Jackson went to the Lakers after. Because why? Because he knew how to manage the egos of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So why'd they bring him to the Lakers? To manage the ego of, not the ego, but how to deal with superstars. And I had I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but it's fortunate. But I had the fortunate opportunity for my first team to be Team Noguera, which was, Minotauro Noguera, Little Nog, Big Nog, Anderson Silva, Junior Dos Santos. The Pitbull brothers were 21, 22 at the time. And I had that unique opportunity, and it was definitely a wild time because you have to learn how to manage these egos. And it's not egos, is that these fighters change. And, Henry kind of mentioned it a little bit when he was with Terry Brands. It was like a drill sergeant type. It was a little bit tougher, where it's my way or the highway. And when you start dealing, and I don't have I have guys all over the world. So I have the Korean Zombie, I have the Eraser, in a whole nother part of Brazil than the Pitbull brothers, Henry. So I don't have a team per se that all train together, but you have to learn how to manage what each individual wants.
How do you do that?
And it's very hard.
What can you tell us? Like, so for both, like, as at a coaching level conversation, but what would you tell, like, peer level leaders, like guys who are captains of the team or guys who might lead in a supportive role in the team? What have you learned? Any nuggets, any insight of how do you manage those egos? How are you that Phil Jackson of MMA? How do you manage those guys, but also cultivate the guys coming up who might not be the Kardashian egos at the top, but you need to fan those flames so that they can get there.
A lot of those, to tell you the truth, those guys, it's pretty easy to fan that part of it. They're already. Well, that's why I only have 5 fighters, but we got 4 belts. Oh, it's the Eraser sought me out on Facebook and wrote me. Like, nobody ever writes me because they know I'm going to hound them on wrestling. You need wrestling to win. You need wrestling to be the best in the world, and everything after wrestling will be easy. And I drive that down their throat than more than any other coach you will ever meet. So, and it's not, and that's part of it, is that I'm willing to fight with them over that. And there's not a lot of, if my fighters see me, I walk in the gym, they know, oh shit, here we're going to be talking about wrestling. But I want that in their head, because I have fighters, if I'm not in the corner, they won't wrestle at all. And then I'll come, and even if it's for a world title. And then I came as like, what happened? Where was your wrestling? Oh, shit, I forgot. You weren't in my corner. Like, I don't need to be. It's like, I'm so, they're so afraid, or I impose wrestling on them so much that it becomes I want it to be an instinct of theirs, and that's really hard to do. But I believe that wrestling is probably the most important. It is the most important discipline for MMA, and if they don't have it, I really push it on them. And if they do have it, I make sure they're going to use it in their in the fights.
Well, that's a pretty powerful influence that you're having in that regard, that you can change how they even tactically perform based on if you're there or not. That's pretty wild. So a question I got for you is, like, you mentioned obviously the importance of wrestling to MMA and all that. And one of the things I think that seems to be very special about what you've done with Henry, and what Henry's done on his own, is he's a freestyle wrestler. Certainly had a background in Greco, but in Matt's generation of UFC, really it was led by a lot of the Greco guys, Chael, Randy, Matt, and,
Hendo.
Yeah, Henderson. And, you got a lot of the clinch stuff. You got people up on the up on the fence and all that. As a coach now, obviously wrestling is really important. Where do you see that difference between Greco and freestyle now making an impact in MMA? Like, is there a difference? Does it matter? Is there an advantage, or is there something Henry did differently than what a lot of freestyle guys maybe haven't been able to be successful with in the fight game?
I think Greco is super important in MMA. Probably more important than free American Greco, more important than freestyle. And because you're standing up already. You're not bent over, leaving yourself susceptible to knees and guillotines. So
you saw that with Askren.
Exactly. Which is always I always attribute a lot of my coach's success in MMA to that. I also would train Greco and freestyle and Greco. Freestyle, I would go to not all the practices, but we would go to both. I'd go to Greco practices at the OTC. I go to Greco practices with the World Class Athlete Program, at Fort Carson. So Greco was real important, and a couple of the seasons where we did the overtime was in the clinch. Once was the over-under, the 50-50 position. And one time, for a few months, it was double unders. You started with double unders. So we trained all these double unders day in, day out. That was the number one position we trained. And that double unders is a very important position in MMA, very dominant position. I would consider it as, if you were in jiu-jitsu, the mounting somebody is double under. So it is extremely important, and I studied that and competed with using that position, defending it, and offensively as well. So Greco is definitely part of my success as a coach. But then, you have to have the freestyle, because you're going to have to sprawl. You're going to have to – obviously, there's shooting involved. I just think there's just less risk, and I think it's moving even more towards Greco as this game evolves. The coaches have to evolve too. And that's also one of the reasons why I think I'm one of the best coaches, because I lived at the Olympic Training Center, and I trained with Anatoly Petrosian. We trained with Mo Mir. We trained with Ike. We trained with Matt Lindland. We trained with Sean Lewis. All on top of 15 years of freestyle, training under Sergey Beloglava, training with Terry Brands, Kevin Jackson. So I have and then you throw in the folk style, which is the control on bottom. Second and third period in college is top and bottom. And now you add that into your MMA game, being to take somebody down and control, and then you can throw punches in it. An American folk style wrestler that knows Greco is that right there is a very hard person to beat.
So you've been an athlete at the OTC and a coach now, the very best around the world with all this. What do you say to guys who are dreamers right now? They're dreaming to try to make this Olympic team, make the world teams, win these medals in the wrestling game, or fighters who might feel like they're struggling because they don't have the support, or they feel like they don't have the funding because there's not a lot of fun. Wrestling's not a sport that has a lot of funding. Henry talked about having a good attitude when he was there and seeing it all as opportunities, having the great resources and the food, and just, this is awesome. Guys who are trying to climb that ladder, what was your experience as an athlete with the struggles of being an amateur athlete that you're going to have? You're not going to have a lot of money. You're not going to have a lot of resources. How did you find a way to maintain the positive attitude, see things in the right way? And how do you guide your athletes now from the coaching side as they work through those natural challenges of climbing the mountain?
the path isn't the same for everybody. The opportunities sometimes come, and sometimes you got to swim out to meet them. Don't wait for that ship to come in. Swim out to meet it. And a lot of people just thinking that just hard work is enough, and it's not. Everybody works hard in wrestling. Are you kidding me? I mean, everybody go, who's going to be the hard? But everybody works hard in wrestling. What are you gonna? How are these opportunities going to come to you if you're doing the same as everybody else? What are you going to do different? For instance, for my fighters in Brazil, it's hard to get in the UFC because there's only a certain amount of Brazilians. They already have 200, right? So, okay, so what are you doing different? Okay, your record's 10-0. Well, there's 18 other fighters that are 10-0, 200 that are 10-1, another 300 that are 10-2, another 400 that are 12-4, and they're all trying to get in the UFC. What are you going to do different? And I am like, you have to be able to, well, you better learn the language of the boss that you're trying to, of the company that you want to be in, the promotion. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. The ones that are, double their opportunities. So what is an athlete willing to do? What will I do different that nobody else is willing to do? You know, right now, Brazil is the epicenter of the COVID, right? I'm trying to find a way to get there. Because the eraser, Paulo Costa, has a fight for the title at 185. I'm willing to fly to Bolivia and cross through the borders, through the forest to train this fighter because I'm willing to do whatever it takes for him to win that title. I'm willing to get on a plane. I'm willing to find somebody that'll fly me down there if there's no planes. I'm willing to cross borders. I'm willing
I can find you a pilot.
There you go. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to him because right now there's a travel ban unless you have special interest. We're working on talking to the president of Brazil, which is a huge fan of Paulo. Paulo went to visit him in the hospital when he got almost assassinated. He was stabbed in the stomach. But so we're working on a way for me to get down there as a special interest to train him, and even if there wasn't a travel ban, but it was the epicenter, I was just about to buy my flight and to go down it right into the eye of the hurricane. Doesn't matter. We're gonna get him ready. We're going to win. So I would say you have to stick out. There's a lot of people that are what Henry was, uncommon winners, but you need to be uncommon amongst uncommon people. What will you do different? And for me, probably I went to Brazil. That was different. Nobody was willing. You saw me when I met you, Rick. I was actually at ground zero. That was my rock bottom when I met you. I told you that recently, and you said you didn't even know it. I was like, man, I was living out my car, depressed, not knowing what I was going to do. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do that. And I'm talking about Henry. I wasn't even a coach back then. So I thought about, I need to put myself in a situation and to get the best. And I went to the #1 team in Brazil and really the world. Anderson Silva, Big Nog, Little Nog, Junior Dos Santos. So, I mean these guys are already #1. So
I remember that.
Just like I went to the OTC, just like I went to ASU, I remember being here in Florida and not having any partners. And I remember always trying to seek out I would seek somebody that would won districts. I would seek somebody that won regionals. I would seek out somebody. I would run to them. I didn't have a car. I would run 15 miles to train with someone that took fourth that qualified for state, because I thought that was the best. In my mind, that was awesome. I was like, oh my God, that guy's, in my mind, that was an Olympic champion. There was nobody around. I come from South Florida. There was no wrestling around here. And I just always sought out the best, which is, like I said, how I made it to ASU, how I made it to the OTC, why I brought my guys back to the OTC.
But that's what made you the best, and that's what helps you make them the best. You know, you mentioned that word uncommon a lot, and we've talked about it a lot today. And I mean, that was one of the things that I think even Matt and I might have bonded over when we were in Buena Vista with you long ago. I remember, I don't know, Matt, you might not remember this. We were driving down to that, to the Royal Gorge, and we both, I think we smiled, or we seemed to connect and understand each other over a conversation where we both said, like, nobody wanted to ever wrestle us in practice. We're like, yeah, we were weird. Like, people didn't like wrestling us. We weren't fun. We were like it was weird. Like, and in your documentary, Randy said the same thing. You know, Fighting Politics, he's like, yeah, Matt was just the guy every single time. I need a partner. My hands up. Nobody wants to wrestle you. Nobody wants to wrestle me. Like Henry said it earlier. He's like, you know, he's going so hard. He's getting his coach called back home, being like, what's wrong with this guy? And people are like, no, that's how he is. And, you know, to hear you say that, Eric, is interesting, because you're right. That uncommonness it is common among the great people. It's what you need to do great things. And most people don't realize that. And a lot of people, I think, become susceptible to those social influences and forces trying to suck you back down to average as you're trying to climb up and out. It's pervasive.
Well, people don't want to be odd and different. They want to fit in, and fitting in isn't going to get you to the top of the mountain. You have to, like Henry said, and Eric both, you have to be uncommon, and you have to do things completely different than anybody else is willing to do to get to those. Look who Henry was just hanging out with. One of the most uncommon people in the world is Mike Tyson. I mean, that guy is a strange, odd individual, but he was also the best at what he did.
Yeah, and
they seek. There's an attraction there. There's an attraction there. For some reason, we gravitate. This is about attracting good energy. It's a star radiator. But there's I don't know. There's like, it has to do with math.
All right.
Stuff in here.
But you're the radiator, man. You're the radiator, Eric. I mean, you have such positive energy, and like you said, when we, you know, I think in 2011 when we all three met, I mean, I think we were all at our sort of transition points. I remember, Matt, you were trying to move out of MMA and get back into wrestling, and Eric, you were just starting to build this whole new flourishing career now and coaching, and now is just transitioning out of grad school and trying to find that next direction. And I mean, you were such an integrator there, Eric, and connecting all of us that we've now helped each other, I think, to climb together in our respective sort of parallel paths. And it's inspiring to see. I mean, you inspire me. Your story itself, I mean, everybody talks about Henry's story, but your story is incredible. I mean, you know, I know what you've gone through and the perseverance that you've had to give, and the belief system. And, you know, if you were at your rock bottom, then you were still preaching that at that time. You were telling people, you know, the biggest room in the house is the room for improvement. Like, you don't have a negative bone in your body, man. Every single thing is positivity about you. And to see how your belief system, you know, built this career for you now is freaking awesome.
I remember saying that. I think, did I say that to you? The biggest room in the house is the room for improvement? Yeah. Because now I haven't probably said that since that day. I remember saying that, but I hear as a coach now, it's also important to continue to evolve. When you come from a traditional sport, that's exactly what it is, tradition. You coach like your coaches coached you, and he coached like his coaches coached him, and you have to continuously evolve. And then when you get somebody like a Henry Cejudo, a Ferrari, and if you ain't a Ferrari mechanic, you better seek out some. So you better surround yourself with the greatest technology, with sports psychologists, with sports performance coaches, with nutritionists, with remember we talked neuroscientists. I remember talking to you about that Halo. I mean, nobody's using Halo, but my fighters are using Halo. Nobody's using this CVAC machine, but my fighters use this CVAC machine, because when I have a Ferrari, you have to treat them like a Ferrari, and it's about recovery too, and listening to your fighter is the biggest thing when you're dealing at the top of the food chain. You have to listen to them more than bark commands, because these guys are coming from different disciplines, and even now you think about millennials, it's different, man. I remember in the military, everybody knows how drill sergeants are, but then for a couple of years, the cadets and basic training, and you could whip out a stress card. I said, "Excuse me, you're stressing me out too much." It says I'm being stressed. And I think the military changed a little bit. I'm not saying that was right. A couple of times I grabbed those cards and threw them in the trash bin and burned them in front of them and made everybody pull it in. But I have evolved since then, because what happens is all these fighters come from different backgrounds. I can't it's very hard to enforce wrestling culture on someone from jiu-jitsu. It's completely different, or someone from boxing, or someone from kickboxing. And so you have to really learn how to go in and out of this labyrinth of dealing with a fighter from not only a different country, a different discipline than yours. So I think you have to learn how to do that. And that's how I've been fortunate to be able to do that with Pitbull, the Eraser, Zombie. But they've sought me out, and I've sought. At some point, they started seeking me out. Even I remember I wasn't coaching Henry. Henry called. We came back together a couple after he was already in the UFC.
Well, I remember you telling me about Pitbull, like before I remember you calling me to come up to Dallas. You're like, "Yo, I got to train. Going to some Indian casino in Oklahoma. I need a place. I got this guy. He's going to be great. We need to train when we're up there." And, but I remember what you said, though, too, about all of them, Henry, Patricia, all these guys. You're like, they're good kids. They're good guys. They're coachable. They listen. They want to grow. They have good attitudes. And you were raving to me about those intangible traits. You're like, yeah, they're fast and they punch. But like you said, like everybody's good. Everybody. You were talking about their physical traits. You were talking about their mental traits, their emotional traits, and that they were coachable. And that really resonated and told me that it was legit. And so, but I got to pick a question for you, Matt, actually, based on what Captain Americas is saying. So you're talking about evolving in coaching, particularly in like a tradition, right, of wrestling. So like that's got to be hard. So Greco is pretty much the oldest sport ever of tradition, that classic style that you've been talking about going back forever. So where are the challenges in the sport of Greco, or in terms of evolving in coaching, and how are you approaching that to try to do that in a sport that's so old and so grounded in tradition?
Well, I think that's like Eric says, is we're looking for every single opportunity to advance our athletes, whether it's through sports science, sports nutrition, psychology. We're looking for all those advantages and finding the athletes that are willing to seek out those different opportunities. You know, they're not rooted in tradition; they're open-minded. And yes, the sport is very traditional and it's the classic style of wrestling, but we're looking for athletes that are willing to seek out those opportunities to improve in every area, whether it's getting better at recovery or getting better at the sports science side of things, or getting better at how can they adjust their psychology and their mental state and their attitudes. I think that's where we're looking for growth out of our guys, is how can we get better. I mean, some of the areas I'm looking at here on my wall here, you know, the areas that we want to focus on is neutral push, angles of attack, defense on bottom, and then top pressure creating lifts. And through that, we're using, you know, how we're using teamwork. We're working on building our communication, a sense of urgency. There's no tomorrow. It's right now. We got to look at doing these things immediately and attacking a problem from every angle. We can't attack things literally from a linear perspective. We got to attack things at every different angle, and just creating those opportunities to improve everywhere.
It's funny you say about when you look at the board. I realized just recently that what makes at least Olympic world-class level athletes, and from my own experience, is that these fighters don't have a date. So when we were at the Olympic Training Center, they used to have that clock up there. When you pull in, it had 993 days until you fight. I mean, until competition. Yeah. 900 days, 800 days, 200 days, 90 days. And it was, man, that, like, I'm not taking off today. I got to get better. Look at this. It's counting down. It's like there's a countdown. And fighting, you don't have a countdown. And if you don't have that pressure of a countdown, every day the Olympic athlete has a countdown. And that every day you wake up, you are fighting against yourself, that countdown, and everybody else. And you don't have that in MMA. There's no countdown. They're just, if there's no fight, they might not even train. But even if they are training, the sense of urgency isn't there. That pressure to look, I got to get better today because another day's passed, and now we're one day closer to 2008, 2004. And I could go, I always say this, when I grab an Olympian, if I tell them this number, they always come back with an answer. And I'll even demonstrate it with Matt Lindland, because if I say 1996, what city pops in your mind?
Atlanta.
If I say 1992?
Barcelona.
2000. Obviously.
Sydney. Yeah.
I mean, I could say 2016. I could say 2012. Those numbers are etched in our head. I can go to 88 in Korea. I can go 84, 80, 76, 72, 68, Mexico. I can go all the way back as far as it goes because those dates mean something. And no fighter has a date. In wrestling, you got a date. It's always in February. In college, it's always in March. Everybody has that countdown, and we don't have a countdown. You had a countdown, Rick, because you just said it, 2008, 2012, 2016. Those countdowns is the pressure that motivates you. But then when you're done wrestling, let's say, that pressure has now created a diamond. So now you're in MMA, but you're a diamond already. That pressure of training for the Olympics made you a diamond, or it bursted you, right? But if you're in MMA and you're going towards the top, you're a diamond already, and you see it. You see them go straight to the top. This is why a lot of times it's the wrestler that's the champion. There's obviously there's people that aren't come from wrestling that are champions as well, and those are uncommon people. Those are uncommon amongst even wrestlers.
We talk a lot about that in the show in the earlier episodes this year, where we were kind of talking to the younger guys about it takes a quad. Like, we were trying to communicate to guys how short 4 years actually is. Like, if you want to train for the Olympics, like, there's a lot of shit that needs to be done in that 4 years. If you're not there today, man, 4 years is not very long. Like, and you know, if guys haven't done it, they don't know how short that period is to climb a really tall mountain. And so what you were talking about, Eric, is like you said, you have that clock. And so for me, I think that's one of the things that a lot of that people find uncommon. So like when I come back to work at like Cal State, or, you know, when I come back from NASA or the OTC with you guys or whatever, that's one of the culture shocks is like people don't, for me, like you said, you've got that diamond, that's that clock in your head, and people don't get that because something happens and I'm like, oh, I got to do this today, or this thing we got to get this thing done next month. And they're like, well, what's the big deal? What's the rush? And I'm like, well, if we don't get this thing done, then I can't get this position I'm trying to get 4 years from now. And they're like, yeah, but that's 4 years from now. Like, you know, you get that, like, don't worry about that. And I'm like, no, you got to see the vision. This has to happen. These little baby grains of sand, these little things have to happen to build to these other little things. You have to have the vision. You have to see that pathway of how you get to where it needs to be 4 years from now, that clock on the wall. And people, I've found that a lot of people don't get that. And maybe I'm weird about that. I'm sure I am, but
a lot of it, nobody explains it to them either. It's not explained. I met this fighter from Spain. This guy's awesome. You guys would love him. His name is Juan Espino. And he comes from wrestling, but the Canary Islands folk style wrestling, they wear like jeans and a belt, or it's a different kind of wrestling. But this guy has done every wrestling, Senegal, regular wrestling. It's a funny story is I go, I don't know if you know who Francis Ngannou is, and yeah. He's a huge fighter from Africa, Cameroon, and he's knocking everybody out. And I asked this guy, I said, would you fight him? Would you, what do you think of that guy? Well, I mean, look how he's pretty intimidating. And he's like, Eric, he's like, are you kidding me? And he pulls up a video and goes, look at me. He's in Senegal wrestling six Senegalese at once. It was a game, like kill the guy with the ball. It was some wild game that they have out there. I'm just like, oh my God. And he goes, and I learned the rules on the plane ride to there. And so I'm like, okay, you're 39. He's 265 pounds. And he's 39. I'm like, so what do you, this is when I started thinking about the date. And I was like, you're 39. I was like, you don't got that much time left. Like, you're way past your prime, but he's really in good shape. Perfect, the perfect student. If you hear his story, it's a great story, how he even got into UFC. But I'm like, man, this guy's psychologically there. He listens. He's like a great student. He's 39 though. I'm like, man, when do you plan on when are you going to become the champion? He's like, well, I'm like, no, you need a date. So you can go on his Instagram now and it says countdown to 2022. I gave him that date and I was like, no, you're not done by 41. It's not happening. You need that date in your head, ticking down, that pressure every day, that sense of urgency to evolve, to seek out the best, to not be the best in the room. Seek out where you're the worst in the room. Seek out people that are better than you. So, and that's what he's doing. And that's, I mean, I see him in this first step with the countdown up to 2022. Now, I don't think anybody knows what that means, but me and him, and now you guys. But even now, he's in quarantine in Spain, and he wrote me. He's like, "Hey, I want to learn karate. Tell me some stuff about karate," because Patricio Pitbull and Henry Cejudo was training karate for MMA. So I sought out. I spoke to our karate instructor in Brazil, Manuel Santana. He told us of a guy in Spain, and now he's training with this guy, even during quarantine, karate. So he's seeking out how to evolve just like me. And I mean, and he's got the countdown. And speaking about evolving is another thing is stem cells. So as technology is evolving, even in the medical field, I'm always seeking out things like that. So even Henry went and got stem cells. Patricia Pitbull went and got stem cells. Even stem cells into intrathecal, where it's into your, I want to say somewhere in the spine, but it travels up into your brain, and it's believed to help prevent CTE. But then again, it rejuvenates your whole body, where you're back to your pre-injured self and you feel 18 again. And I can tell you that Henry got stem cells 5 weeks before this camp. And in the camp, he got injured pretty bad 3 times, 12 hours. Overnight, he was back. Overnight. I think he blew out his ankle completely. 3 ligaments, like he did against Marlon Moraes. And 12 hours later, he was back. Still purple, but he was back. He tore something with his hamstring, and then I think his knee, all back immediately. I've never seen that before. So I probably a couple of those injuries, we would have had to postpone the fight. And stem cell and recovery is something that is different than the tradition of MMA, wrestling, MMA, or wrestling and MMA, and boxers and jiu-jitsu. Recovery is not part of our coaches' thinking, because every coach, there's 5 coaches, right? Maybe sometimes more, maybe a couple less, but every coach tries to push you to your max. So if you go a 90-minute wrestling match, let's say like the grind, at the OTC, and then you go down to boxing, the boxing puts you through, I haven't had you for 4 days, I'm going to put you through a grind too. There's no recovery there. And you got to my job is to get all the coaches on board to be open-minded. If you're open-minded in this game, you can go real far. Like I said, the stem cells, we don't even do the stem cells in the U.S. We go to BioAccelerator in Medellin, Colombia. That's out of the box. Who's flying to Colombia to do it? Now a lot of people are. Now, ever since Patricia was the first person to get stem cells, all the pro wrestlers are coming. All the football players are coming. A lot of MMA fighters are coming. I've even reached out to Jordan Burroughs. I was like, Jordan, you can't train like you used to. You're not 22. You're 32, 33. This is what I've done with my 2 fighters that have 2 world titles, and they're also 32. We do stem cells and BioAccelerator in Medellin. Right before the camp, we do a CVAC, which is a cardiovascular, like an altitude pod that Henry does. And then we do heart variability. We're measuring them all at once. We have the omega wave checking his central nervous system when he wakes up to see where his inflammation is, his strength and endurance. I get that report every day. Sports performance coaches, the heart variability, a team chiropractor for Triple C's last camp. I had Dr. Dan Fakir. He was an All-American at ASU. He's a chiropractor. He was at every practice, adjusting Henry before, after, during, whatever Henry needed, at night, going over his house if he needed to, stretching him. It's just professional, high level, and evolving and seeking to evolve. Is this much different than what we used to do? I mean, if I go back to like NCAAs, and I'll go back to a college and look at what they're doing, I'm just like, man, I feel like we're so far ahead because there's so much tradition. And even though they have evolved, but just not like in MMA, where if you have an open mind and you have champions, a lot of stuff comes to you. And I'm there to absorb it all and learn from the nutritionist, learn from the dietitians, learn from the chiropractor, learn from the sports psychologist, and then learning from you at the Olympic Training Center, going to Brazil, going to Amsterdam, going to Thailand, going to Singapore, and just learning from everybody and then bringing it all in and making it your own. But it's definitely, if I could say one thing about wrestling on how we could improve it, and it would be the recovery portion. I just don't know how to do it for an entire team, because we do the heart variability on one person, and we have 8 coaches there watching one person, and all 8 is focused on him. You know, Henry talked about being selfish, where the coach has to be the opposite. The coach has to be unselfish. The coach is giving part of himself to the athlete, whether it's time, whether it's his own family time, whether it's, are you kidding me? I'm on the road 40 weeks out of the year. I mean, you're on the road, you're at work all the time, or you're going to the Olympic, or you're going to conferences, you're going to seminars, and that takes away from family time. I think what makes me different is I'm single without kids, and I'm obsessed with being the best. So I'm willing to go wherever, and nothing can hold me back, and not hold me back, but I don't have to worry about being home because I don't have a wife and children.
It's been so good to hear your perspective on the sport. And, you know, we have so much in common because we both did that when we left wrestling and we got into MMA. It was just travel the world, seek out the best, seek out information, learn, grow, have that sense of urgency. I mean, such great messages, and it was great to have you on and have Henry on with us. And we're going to wrap this up and get it posted. Thank you, brother.